Good day. This is Table Talk. I am your host, Stan Deatherage, and the topic for the day will be the memorialization, easy for me to say, of Memorial Day. My forever colleague and co-host, David Hudson, also known as Down East Dave, will be with us today, and he's going to run lead on this show today. Dave was in the Army for 8 years, served as a captain. He was also in the Air Force for 8 years, again served as a captain. So he knows what it's like to be in the military. He knows a lot of folks from the military. He understands what conflict is like, and we've had a lot of conflicts around the world that the United States has had to be involved in. But first, let's talk about the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Memorial Day is a day that we Americans sometimes have fun on. We go to the beach, we drink beer, we have party. But that's not the reason for Memorial Day. The essence of Memorial Day is to memorialize those who have fought in defense of this country and have fallen. And what we do is we understand the great sacrifice they have made, we thank them for it, and we memorialize their duty. Memorializing the duty of these great soldiers began in 1868 when the great Army of the Republic, right after the Civil War, decided to use Arlington Cemetery as the focal point for memorializing those that had fallen in that great conflict. Oddly enough, in 1866, the South had already started with their Memorial Day when they memorialized their Confederate soldiers that had died in the Civil War, which was between 1860 and 1865. So they started sooner.
Yes, that's right.
I guess in that respect, the North was just following the South once again.
A little bit.
But Dave, Veterans Day sometimes gets confused. It's a day of honoring all veterans, which began in, I think, the 1920s, after World War I, a day of armistice, where the armistice was signed at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month.
Correct.
That was the day that the war officially ended for the Great War that began in 1914 and ended in 1918. To celebrate that day, a day of great sacrifice for countries around the world, it became Armistice Day, and now it's Veterans Day here in America. Am I right?
Yes.
Good. Well, would you like to interject at all about what I've said?
No, I think you're hitting it.
I'm hitting it right on the button?
Right on the button.
Oh, good. I do know on Memorial Day, I try to understand the day for what it is. I might go to the beach just like the rest of you, but we should all hold in our hearts what this great sacrifice has been and what these men and women have done for our country. And those days are going to continue because we have conflicts around the world and more of our soldiers are still dying.
That's correct.
And you know some of them, don't you? And you want to discuss that.
Yes, that's what I'd like to do today, is speak a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. I'm going to pass the show over to you. And let's all understand Memorial Day for what it is, different than Veterans Day. Okay, you want to go to the beach, hold in your heart for what is important. But do have reverence for this day and the rest of this show. Dave?
Appreciate it, Stan. Yes, so today, again, we'd like to just discuss Memorial Day, what that's about, and remember some of my fellow friends and colleagues who we lost during the War on Terror. It's a day of significance to myself and a number of other people, and we always want to remember those folks. Of course, it is the beginning of the summer season. A lot of folks take that time to spend together with their families and enjoy being outside, especially after cold or winter months for places up north and things like that. But we don't have as many issues here in the South with the cold. But again, it marks the beginning of summer a lot of times to the civilian population. And in the United States today, only 1% of the population has ever served in the military. So there's a very large disconnect between military service, the sacrifices made by those individuals who serve in uniform, and the sacrifices made by the family members who support them as well. So Memorial Day is significant because this is when we remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms that we get to enjoy when we do gather together and eat at the barbecue, or we go out on the boat, or do some of those things.
I'd like to add one thing.
Absolutely.
I have not served, and I hold in my heart an very huge amount of reverence for you that have. My father served, and he was in World War II. He knew a lot of young men that perished, and Yeah, he even had PTSD on and on and on afterwards after fighting in the Pacific Theater. My son did not fight in conflict. He was in the Coast Guard. So I guess I skipped the generation after and before. But I hold great reverence for all veterans. I appreciate their service. But those that died, that's a whole different kettle of fish. It is the memorialization that you speak of now that is so important.
It really is, and that's what we have to remember. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and ultimately to protect this nation, the men and women who serve, they stand out there day and night, whether it's here in the United States or overseas, and that's what really gives us the ability to sleep in peace at night in our beds. And so they do take on and sacrifice just in that service, but so many have made that ultimate sacrifice for us.
Yes, we
And
should be very thankful. And we think about that when you drink that second or third beer. Those have perished before us, that have died for our freedom. They won't be drinking beer this day.
That's right.
And they probably would if they could.
And when we look at that, we can remember this year actually marks the 250th birthday of the United States Army, the foundation. Yes. And our Army was created to defend the United States, originally the 13 colonies, from Great Britain. And so many patriots from that time until today have paid that price to not only continue to keep our country safe, but to help others, to free the oppressed, in so many wars outside of the traditional American Revolution. But if I would, what I'd like to do is just spend a few minutes talking about some of the men that I knew. I knew them. Some of them were friends of mine. Some of them were classmates of mine. Others were soldiers that I had the privilege to serve with during my time in service. And just give you a little bit of background about who they were. That way we can remember who they are, because they did not get to have the benefits of a longer life, and all of the things that they could have achieved or possibly achieved, and how that impacted their families and folks like that as well. The first person that I would like to speak of is Marine Second Lieutenant Thurl Shane Childers. I met him when I was a cadet at the Citadel. He was a non-commissioned officer in the Marine Corps. He had gone to the Citadel to get his college education, and then he was going to be commissioned into the Marine Corps after that. It was called the MESEP program, where Navy and Marine Corps personnel go from being non-commissioned officers to attending college, and then they're able to get their college degree and then commissioned into their respective branch of service. And he was a MESEP there at the Citadel while I was there. He graduated in 2001. I had graduated in 2000, but Shane was the quintessential Marine. You would see him impeccably dressed in uniform. He was married to the Marine Corps. That was his heart and soul. He had already served he had served in the first Gulf War, in the Persian Gulf War in 1991, and then had risen through the ranks before he got into the MESEP program. But you'd see him running around. He'd be running around the parade deck. He'd have a sandbag or two on his shoulders. He was just who you expected, the John Wayne. That was
Marine's Marine.
He was,
Yeah.
And that was Shane. He was commissioned in 2001 and served with the Marine Corps there. But he was the first American to die during the invasion of Iraq on March 21st, 2003. He was leading his Marines forward and was killed by small arms fire. So
that's too bad.
He was.
And I would think he was a very knowledgeable second lieutenant.
He was. He would have been.
I bet he was loved by his platoon.
Absolutely, everybody who knew him loved him. He like I said, he was a Marine's Marine. He led from the front. That was the type person that you would want to have as a leader. And all of us cadets, we respected him. We emulated him. We wanted to be like that. That for all of us who had just come straight out of high school and into college as we were beginning our military careers, he really was a stand-up person that you would want to replicate and follow his example.
Can I ask you one thing?
Absolutely.
Could you expand on him being an NCO and how important that is for young soldiers?
Absolutely. NCOs, they are the backbone of the United States military. Those are the folks who are down in the dirt, getting things done. Traditionally, your officers, although officers will lead larger numbers of troops, platoon level and higher, that's 30 to 40 soldiers or Marines. Your non-commissioned officers, those are your young folks, normally a sergeant, a corporal. They may be anywhere from 20 to 21 years old. And then, of course, as they rise through the ranks further, they go up in age. But they're the ones who lead from the front. They are down there doing the dirty work, doing what they need to do, and they've got the experience. They are the folks that any good officer, when you first get commissioned, you're no better than the lowest private. You might be an officer, but you've spent 0 days in uniform. You're learning just like everybody else, and so if you're smart, you're going to follow the advice of your NCOs because they've got the experience. They've been there. They've lived it. And they're going to be able to share that with you. So I've always said you have to follow those NCOs and get their information, get their buy-in, learn from them, and that's the best way that you can be if you want to really be effective as a leader as you move up through the ranks as well.
I think you've pretty well expressed how important it is to be one of the guys and a leader as well, and that interface between the officer corps and the men that are doing the major part of the fighting.
It is. It's very important, and it comes down to knowing your troops, knowing who they are, respecting them just as much as respect is a two-way street. But even though you may have the authority as an officer to give the orders, that you have that responsibility to care for them as well. That's your primary responsibility, is to make sure that those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines are getting the tools that they need, the training they need, everything that they would have to do in order to be successful in their mission. And if you're doing your job right, providing for them, they're going to be able to accomplish their mission and ultimately be successful.
Yes, and this was a tremendous loss.
It really was. Shane was never married. Like I said, he was married in the Marine Corps, is what everybody always said. But he did leave behind his parents and a brother. So families are deeply involved when we do lose a service member. It's not just a name on a wall somewhere or a picture somewhere.
And today's being memorialized, and he will be remembered.
Absolutely. This next soldier, this one really does hit close to home for me. Army Corporal David Fraze. I met him when I was a platoon leader at Alpha Company, 2nd Battalion, 35th Infantry. We served together at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, as part of the 25th Infantry Division Light. And Corporal Fraze, he was a devout Christian. He was, went to church. Every time he would show up to the barracks, every morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock, he had a smile on his face. Hey, sir. Hey, LT. How's it going? Always happy, always cheerful. He had grown up in New Orleans, Louisiana, grew up going to church, sang in the choir, had a family tradition of military service. He had a cousin, an uncle, a grandfather who also served in the armed forces. Never, I don't believe he ever did. If he did, I don't think anybody ever heard it. Never used profanity. Almost something foreign to your average infantryman. He was, a Christian soldier.
Well, interject here. My father, when he was fighting in World War II, and especially the Battle of Okinawa, which was the largest battle, I believe, in World War II for the Americans, he said there's nothing but Christians in the foxhole, especially when the fighting is that heavy.
That's right. You have to find that faith and something to rely on. Corporal Fraze, he really was a bright person to be around. He was always, as I said, he was always happy. He brought that cheerfulness to being in service. Didn't complain, just kind of the normal infantryman. You're always going to grumble about something. Food's not good enough. I'm tired. I'm dirty. Whatever the case may be, it's just part of the job. But he was always happy. But he unfortunately, when the battalion deployed to Afghanistan in 2004, he was the only casualty that our battalion lost during that first deployment to Afghanistan. But he was killed when his vehicle hit an IED, and that was on June 7th of 2004. He was 24 years old. He left behind a wife and a 6-month-old daughter.
That's so sad.
In service. So his family, had to deal with that, and he's buried in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, at the National Cemetery there as well. But again, just a wonderful individual that lost too soon.
So our greatest heroes always leave much
They-
because they live a full life before they give up so much.
That's right, and and that's the to some extent that the saddest part. It's the what they missed out on. You miss out that time with your family. The family misses the time with you. All the other contributions that you could give to society in addition to that service. So it's a big sacrifice and a big loss.
A loss that many of us will never know.
The next gentleman I'd like to discuss is Marine First Lieutenant Dan Malcolm Jr. And Dan was also Citadel class of 2001. He was a year behind me at the Citadel, and again had gone through the school, got his commission in the Marine Corps, and then went off and served. And Dan, again, Marines, Marines are Marines, and he was just an ideal Marine. He was serving as a artillery with an artillery unit during the battles for Fallujah, and there was a firefight taking place. He had gone up to a rooftop, up to a building to get a better observation point in order to call in artillery or airstrikes, and they were taking fairly heavy fire there. But he was able to complete his mission, supporting the other units that he was responsible for providing that indirect fire support to. This was on November 10th of 2004. And when the fire was getting fairly heavy on the rooftop, they had to really pull out from there just because it was getting a little too heated. And he was the last one to come down off of the building, off the rooftop. And unfortunately, he was killed by small arms fire on his way down a flight of stairs. A round came through a window in the stairwell.
Oh, really?
And that was where he was hit.
I
But
think it was a sniper or just indirect.
I believe it was sniper fire, but wasn't ever confirmed. But he's memorialized there in the Navy and the Marine Corps ROTC department at the Citadel, and he was survived by his mother and sister. But
Let's think
25 years old as well.
Let's think about him being on that rooftop and directing fire where it needed to go. How many lives did he probably save
Probably hundreds.
by giving up his own life to have that perfect vantage point?
That's right. And again, for those not familiar with the war in Iraq, Fallujah, that's one of those bigger battles that you hear about right there in that first year or so of the war. And so he was there. Some of his other classmates were in the area, so he was supporting them. He was taking care of his classmates and his fellow Marines. But
that was a huge battle.
It really was. So a number of other casualties came from that, but he was serving his country and doing what he had always wanted to do. So the next gentleman I'll talk about was Army Specialist Harley Miller. And Harley was not in my unit specifically in 25th Infantry Division. He served in what we call 3/4 Cav. That was the helicopters, the cavalry unit that provided close air support to some extent, but also primarily reconnaissance with the Kiowa helicopter. He was a mechanic and worked on helicopters. He always loved cars, loved working in cars, vehicles, things like that. He also came from a family of servicemen. His grandfather, his father, and 3 uncles had all served in the military as well. So we do see that a lot now. It's an all-volunteer force. It's an all-volunteer military. It has been for over 50 years now. And what we see is generation after generation of folks who pick up that mantle and follow in the footsteps of their forefathers to serve in the military. Harley, I knew him because we hung out in the same social circles. Some of the other folks that we hung out with, we liked cars. We working on those, and so that's how I got to meet him. And he had married his high school sweetheart. They had a child together. And Harley, he was 21 years old at the time, deployed to Afghanistan, and he was killed on November 27th, 2004. When his helicopter crashed into the side of a mountain there in bad weather. So it was an accident, not due to any enemy activity or enemy fire from what everybody could understand. But nonetheless, even in a time of war, we do have a number of folks who we lose due to accidents and other incidents above and beyond just direct enemy actions. It's always important to remember that everybody has an important job, whether it's support, whether it's combat arms, anything. Everybody plays an integral part of the military and a part of the mission. In order for anybody to be successful, everybody has to be successful in there, and that's where Harley came in, providing that maintenance to those different aircraft and all. Even though accidents happen, they're unavoidable, but they still are tragic nonetheless. And Harley was survived again by his wife and son and parents, and was 21 years old. Next soldier going to discuss is Sergeant Kyle Colnott, and Sergeant Colnott, I met him. I had the privilege to serve with him in Alpha Company 235 Infantry Battalion. He was just a specialist at the time. He was a soldier in my platoon. We'd gone through training for a number of different training deployments together, and he showed a lot of potential. He was a great soldier. He led from the front. He always put in that extra effort. And as a result of that, we actually made him a team leader, which is a sergeant, an E5 position, where he was responsible for himself and 3 other soldiers. And because of his abilities and how well he was, and respected by his peers and the other younger soldiers on the platoon. Sergeant Colnott had grown up in California. He attended San Dimas High School. Some people are familiar with that. If you're as old as myself, the old San Dimas High School football rules from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I always thought that place was made up, but Sergeant Colnott taught me otherwise. We had been deployed to the National Training Center when the battalion was preparing to go to Afghanistan, and we were able to take block leave after training out there for about 45 days. And I had a day or two to kill. I'd never been in Los Angeles, and Sergeant Colnott's mother was nice enough to take me in, myself and another soldier, and we got to spend some time touring Los Angeles and staying with his family and visiting with them, and getting to see some of those different areas. And wonderful soldier. He deployed as a team leader to Afghanistan for his first tour, and then I had gotten out of the Army, but he continued to serve, had stayed in the military, and then he was deployed again to Iraq. And had been promoted to sergeant at that point in time. I forgot to mention that, Sergeant Colnott enlisted at the age of 17 with his parents' permission.
Wow.
He, decided he wanted to be in the military. He always kind of lived on the edge, fast cars, full of life. But he went on his second deployment was to Iraq, and his vehicle was hit by an IED. And he was killed on April 22nd of 2006 at the age of 23, and was survived by his wife and parents. So
young.
So young, and just a great individual. Really, it was a privilege to serve with him. Army Sergeant Jonathan Lutens, he had received a commendation for saving the life of another soldier on the battalion's first tour of duty in Afghanistan. He was another person enlisted, led from the front, great soldier. He had served in Charlie Company of my battalion, so I had known him in passing, but again, it was a stand-up NCO. He was the type person that you respected, that you wanted to look to. Again, he led from the front. He looked out for his soldiers. He looked out for their lives. He had already been through the first tour of duty with the battalion in Afghanistan, and then again when the battalion was deployed to Iraq in 2006, he was leading from the front as well. And an IED exploded near his vehicle, and he was killed as a result of that blast on October 15th, 2006. He was survived by his parents and sister as well, not married, but 25 years old. And that's the thing we tend to see. You're young when you serve. It's military service is really a young man's job. It takes a lot out of you physically. That level of not only physical toughness but mental toughness that comes with being able to do that job. America's best and brightest really are those folks who put that uniform on, and you just have to remember that these folks, they could have chosen to do anything they wanted to do in this world, but they chose to raise their hand, take that oath to support and defend the Constitution and protect, the values that we hold dear here in America.
You know how you're just mentioning that youth is the nature of the military. And they say, I've heard people in the past, especially from the peace generation back in the 1970s where I'm hailed from. I remember one of the remarks were, let the older people fight since they make the wars.
Right.
But if they fought, we'd probably lose the wars.
It is definitely a young man's game.
Yeah.
At my age now, 46, looking back, I would have been considered a grandfather. I'm past retirement age for most folks when they get out, so it really is a young man's or a young woman's job.
My father, when he was in Okinawa, his battalion leader was a lieutenant colonel. He was 29 years old.
Oh, yes.
And they called him old man.
Right. I felt old myself. I was about 24 at the time as a platoon leader. I think when I finished my time in platoon, I was a company commander by the time I was 26, 27 years old. We always looked at the platoon sergeant. He was probably about 30. We thought he was the old man. I remember looking at the battalion commander who was maybe 38, 39. They were old, but it's definitely gives you a different take on it. And that also ties back into some of the the sacrifice that we see. We lived young. We lived exciting lives, I think, and we took full advantage of what we could have for the most part. So that's why you see so many of these folks were married. They had children at younger ages than what we would traditionally think of now, to some extent. Just because you realize life is precious, you take into consideration the things that you hold most dear, and look at that.
It is a gift, and I always pray. I do this often, especially on days like Memorial Day, that the good Lord takes an understanding that there will always be soldiers, since there are wars and rumors of wars, and that the good soldier, he will be well represented in heaven.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Army First Lieutenant Joshua Deese, he was a native of North Carolina, actually, and I did not have an opportunity to get to know him very well. He was a brand new second lieutenant when he arrived at Schofield Barracks. At that point in time, I was working with the rear detachment. I was responsible for receiving our wounded home, making sure they were getting proper medical care, taking care of training up other soldiers who were sending out as replacements, and doing things like that. And so he only spent a little bit of time there while I was at the battalion, and then he forward deployed to Afghanistan very soon after that for the battalion's first rotation to Afghanistan. That was in August of 2004. He rose through the ranks, made first lieutenant. He was the Charlie Company executive officer when the battalion deployed to Iraq for the second deployment. He had planned to marry his high school sweetheart when he got back from his deployment. They'd already had a child together, but they were looking to get married when he got back. And he was actually killed by the same IED that killed Sergeant Lutens on October 15th of 2006. But both of them were killed, and a number of other soldiers were wounded. But he was survived by his child and his parents and two sisters and a brother.
And you knew 2 soldiers killed on the same day from the same bomb blast.
Yes.
Wow.
And
that really hits home.
It really does. And that's the thing that we don't talk about are those wounds that other folks have, although they may not be killed in action, but they carry that with them. A number of these other soldiers, Corporal Fraze, when he was killed by an IED in Afghanistan, there were 3 other soldiers that were with him in that vehicle. All 3 of them sustained injuries and were sent back home for medical recuperation. They all stayed in the Army afterwards and returned to duty as quick as possible. And many of them went on to, or of the 3 that I can recall, they volunteered to serve again to go back overseas.
You've talked about IED deaths a lot. Was that before they put the Under Armour on these Humvees?
Some of them were in the early years, especially that first deployment to Afghanistan. We did not have many up armored vehicles. That was still something that was coming out. So
That's the phrase,
that's
up armored.
up armored. The original Humvees did not have armor, so we'd put sandbags in the bottom of them, or if you get some extra body armor, the guys would put body armor in the bottom of them. As the war progressed, we started getting the MRAPs, the armored vehicles, the up armored Humvees, to try and deter or at least alleviate some of the threat that came from the IEDs. But the IEDs continue to evolve like anything else, explosively formed penetrators and other things like that, ways to defeat our armor. So there was always that issue, and a number of different things. But IEDs, to some extent, booby traps, whether they're command detonated, whether it was a mine that was in the road that you ran over, things like that. All of those could come into play, and they did serve to a big extent to where we had a large number of casualties were from those.
Well, certainly sounds like it so far.
Staff Sergeant Richwell Doria, he also served with me in Alpha Company 235 Infantry Battalion when I was there in Hawaii. He's got kind of an interesting story. I think it's, when we talk about who serves, who chooses to serve, why they choose to serve. He was born in the Philippines, and when he was 11 years old, his parents sent him to California to live with relatives, with the idea being that he would have a better life, better opportunities in the United States as opposed to being in the Philippines. He became a citizen around 2004. He was already in the military before he ever got his U.S. citizenship, but he had volunteered to serve in the military, and he married a girl from Hawaii while he was there, and they had a daughter together. He had served in Afghanistan on that first deployment, and then again when the battalion was sent to Iraq for their second tour of duty in 2006. Sergeant Doria was again an NCO leading from the front. He was on an air assault mission to support other soldiers. That's when the helicopters will fly in and deploy troops, either on a specific mission. Sometimes it's a quick response when you have to go out. But he was jumping from the helicopter to assist other soldiers that had been either cut off or were in need of rescue, and then he was killed by small arms fire on November 7th of 2006.
It makes you wonder how important it is for us to worry about the dreamers.
It's I served with a number of soldiers who were foreign nationals who volunteered to serve, Canadians, folks from Scotland. One soldier was from Gambia. A lot of folks will serve the United States because of that opportunity to become a citizen. And not only are they here willing to serve, but I think that's a different level of, integrity, or I don't know what you would call it,
Integrity
for
is a
somebody
great word.
who is willing to be an American,
Yeah.
and not only wants to be an American, but is willing to serve for the ideals we believe in.
He comes from the Philippines. He leaves there and goes to America to become one of our greatest citizens.
Yes.
That's kind of cool.
Yes, it really is.
And we memorialize that today.
Correct.
That's great.
Army Sergeant William Billy Bushnell, he was also in Alpha Company 235 when I was in the battalion there, and he ended up being one of the soldiers that I ended up being closer to. He was an 11 Charlie. Those are the guys who are infantrymen, but their primary mission is indirect fire support with mortars, and he worked on one of our 60 millimeter mortar teams. Wonderful young man, always full of life. We did a lot of tailgating together at different games down at the Aloha Stadium. Southerner from Arkansas, and nice as could be. Always had everybody's back. Just a really great individual. He had served in Afghanistan as well. He went on the first deployment there. And then following that tour, after having been in a unit for such a certain period of time, you have a PCS, which is a permanent change of station. That's when the military picks you up and moves you somewhere else, normally about every 3 years. So he had left the battalion after that deployment. I believe I can't recall which division he had gone to, but he had reenlisted, made the rank of sergeant, and then went back to Iraq on another tour of duty. He was 24 years old at the time. He was killed when his vehicle was hit by an RPG, which is a rocket-propelled grenade, and that was on April 21st, 2007. He was 24 years old and survived by his parents and a younger sister. But again, you get to where you know these folks. They become your family, and that's part of military service that you really don't see in civilian world. You serve a lot of times far from home, far from your family, and so the men and women that you serve with really do become your brothers and sisters. In some cases, they're probably closer than your actual brothers and sisters, and that becomes your family, or family away from home. And so that's why remembering them is so important, because when we do lose these folks who are close to us, it really is like losing a member of your family.
Knowing you as a colleague and what we hear from today, the inference of your discussion of knowing these people well, hanging out with them, partying with them. Unlike some officers, you fraternized with the enlisted class, and I think that's very unique. And I think it would help be a leader, to be a great leader, to know your men so well.
For better or worse, I don't know how it reflected on my service itself, but I always believed as an officer, your job is to take care of the men and women that you're responsible for leading. Your success is their success. And what I found was I was only successful if I made sure my subordinates had what they needed to be successful. If I took care of them, I didn't have to worry about anything else, because they took care of me. And more importantly than that, I always felt if you don't lead from the front, if you aren't willing to do something yourself, you can't ask somebody else to do that. And I always expected my soldiers to know if they had to be pulled out of a burning vehicle or pulled to safety under fire, I would do that. And I would hope that they would do it for me. And I think that's a common goal that we all share, and value that we all share. I was never really a big stickler for rank. An NCO, a private, they're no better or worse than anybody else. We're all Americans. Really what you do is based off of your time in service and your age. And if you're not messing up, you're going to get promoted. And so I don't look at it as a class thing. And I think that's the key part, is understanding that you're all in it together. And even though there are rules and regulations that you have to abide by, you can't take the human element out of that, and the caring for your people. And I think when we know that we care for one another, we're willing to go that extra mile to take care of one another. And that's what we always say. We don't leave a man behind. We'll go out of our way to bring everybody home, regardless of how it is. And ultimately, if you're not willing to make that sacrifice yourself or lead from the front, then you have no business leading. And that's my personal philosophy. But all of the people I've been talking about today, I think they shared the same values. They led from the front. They were leaders. They took care of their subordinates. They were well liked. They were loved by their other soldiers, and other tributes I've seen to them. Everybody shares that same that same mentality, and that's why I think that they are the true heroes. They're the ones who lead by example, and they did that.
Well, I'm just taking from the folks that you presented today that we memorialize in this show. The propensity of them are NCOs and officers. So leading from the front is something that they were conditioned to do. It's a great system.
It really is.
The American military, especially the American Army, has a lot of great fighting officers. And I don't know if it's like that with other countries, but we are known in this nation for having officers that fought from the front.
That's right.
The great leaders.
They do. You have to inspire. You have to inspire confidence. And in a free society in which we live, we as opposed to the Russian army or someone else, you have to be able to lead by example, because why? It's not you're going to do what I tell you to do because it's an order, or there's the threat of death because we'll shoot you in the back if you don't do what we say. It's you have to have that inspiration and be able to do that, and that's why these people really are heroes.
The American military is the greatest military in the world.
Absolutely.
And that's probably one of the top reasons why.
Absolutely. Next person I'll speak to is Staff Sergeant Jason Patton. And I met him when I was in Hawaii, and he had already been on a deployment before and had gotten a PCS. And so he had come home from a deployment. They sent him to Hawaii, and he had already been in Iraq for his first tour. And as soon as he got to Hawaii, he said, "Hey, sir, send me. I'm ready to go." He normally you had to have a little bit of time. There were regulations. You had to give folks a certain amount of period at home to rest, recover. Again, this was still fairly early in the war, 2004. He said, "No, I want to go. Get me there." And so he deployed to Afghanistan for his second tour, almost back to back, and had served there, served well, moved up in the ranks. He was serving in our scout platoon. Those folks do reconnaissance missions, a lot of times other things like that for the battalion. And then when the battalion deployed again to Iraq, he went at that as well. And he was flying in a helicopter. Was about 3 weeks away from coming home. The tours were getting extended back then due to the surge and needing to keep more folks in country. So they were extending tours. The battalion's tour got extended, and so he was extended. He was supposed to come home and get married that November, but again on one of the missions. The helicopter he was flying in had a malfunction. Something went wrong in the helicopter, and it crashed. And so he and 13 other soldiers were killed on August 22nd, 2007, in a helicopter crash. That again was not directly attributed to any hostile fire, but helicopters being machines, they're very unforgiving in desert climates. Heat, altitude, sand, all of those different things can cause issues even when you're doing the best maintenance possible. So that was a big loss for the unit. He was 25 years old as well.
Was this a Chinook
helicopter? It was a Black Hawk.
They got that many in the Black Hawk?
You can squeeze that many in a Black Hawk.
That's pretty tight.
It's tight. It's hard to get in and out of when you're doing that. But he was survived by his parents. And again, he was one of those guys. He led from the front. Again, you're volunteering. He's volunteering to go repeatedly, take those missions and keep going. The last soldier I'm going to speak to was Army First Lieutenant Ryan Rawl, and he really kind of holds a special place. All of these folks are special. Ryan's brother was Stan Rawl, and he was one of my best friends at the Citadel. He was a class of 2001, a year behind me, and he served as one of my corporals when I was in the Citadel in the cadet ranks. I was the squad leader. He was the assistant squad leader. Stan was. So that's how I met Ryan. Ryan was his younger brother, and they were from South Carolina. Ryan graduated class of 2004. He followed in his brother's footsteps, came to the Citadel, and then he went to work for the Richland County Sheriff's Department. Served on the Sheriff's Department. Loved children. Had a family of his own. He was married. Had 2 children, and he served as a resource officer at Creighton Middle School in Columbia. So that was his passion. Taking care of children. Providing public safety, things like that. He was a military police officer in the South Carolina National Guard, and they were deployed to Afghanistan in early 2011, 2012 timeframe. And Ryan was serving there with his other officers, and he was killed by a suicide bomber.
Oh, wow.
In June 20th of 2012. 30 years old. So he left behind not only his wife and 2 children, but his parents and brother and folks like that as well. But again, when you look at these folks, whether they're officer or enlisted, the level of training that they go through, the experience they have, just the dedication, all of that we could reroute into other avenues if we didn't lose them so early in the life that they could have had. It's just it's what really makes it all the more heartbreaking, in my opinion, above and beyond just the loss that we see. So we've been talking about all of these different individuals today. The last thing that I would want to bring up, there was one other individual that I did know. He had served. We'd served together in the army together, and he went on to become special forces. Had done multiple tours. Um, he unfortunately took his own life a few years ago,
Oh,
and that's a major issue that we do see, unfortunately, in the military is the suicide rate, and whether it's attributed directly to the experiences overseas or whatever the case may be, but um, even though it's not considered a combat loss or considered killed in action, they nonetheless carry those internal scars or injuries with them, and that's something that everybody should be aware of. It's very important to folks in the military to make sure that you reach out, you check on your buddies, you make sure that if a guy's having a hard time that you always try to check up and take care of that, because they may not have been casualties due to enemy action, but in my opinion, they're casualties nonetheless, but because of their service. But won't mention him just for privacy reasons. But we have talked about the loss of those individuals. Again, they were young. The average age was 25 years old, and so on Memorial Day, that's what we really need to remember is those folks who volunteered to serve, whether it was during the volunteer army, those folks who were drafted, anybody throughout any of our wars. That we remember the sacrifices they made to give us the freedoms and all that we enjoy today, and remember them, remember their loss. Again, we should always, if you know a family or somebody who lost a loved one during their military service, those folks are called Gold Star families or Gold Star mothers to some extent, Gold Star spouses. And where that comes from is there were banners that came out World War I, World War II time frame, and families could hang these banners in their window. They had a blue star that represented each member of the family that was serving in the military. And so you would hang those in your window just to let people know that you had a family member in service. If you lose a family member during the war, that you become a Gold Star family, and you receive a Gold Star that goes over the blue star on that banner to signify that the family did have a loss, or one of their family members was killed in service. Um, so it's important to remember those folks as well. They do have specific days for that. Gold Star Mothers and Families Day is the last Sunday of September, and Gold Star Spouses Day is April 5th. And so there are days where we do recognize the loss that these people have had as well, when they lose that family member. So even though it's not directly tied to Memorial Day itself, that's when we do remember our fallen soldiers. And I say soldiers generically; it could be anybody from any of our branches of armed services. But again, this is a time when those families have to remember as well, and the loss that they had. So we do always want people to enjoy themselves. We love this place where we live in Eastern North Carolina. North Carolina is the most military-friendly state in the country. We have Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines all represented here in large numbers. 82nd Airborne Division out in Fayetteville, 2nd Marine Division down in Jacksonville, Cherry Point, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. We have a big military presence here in the United States, or excuse me, here in North Carolina specifically. So again, we just wanted to let everybody know, always be thankful for our veterans. That's what Veterans Day is for. But Memorial Day, we remember those that we lost in service. And so I hope that today we were just able to honor some of those individuals. I know there's certainly many more out there. There's even folks here in Beaufort County. And going forward, if you'd like, please comment on the video, give us some feedback. We'd be more than happy to try and represent your family member as well as we go forward. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. We do hope you have a wonderful Memorial Day. Stay safe. That's the key part. And enjoy those freedoms that we have.
I'd like to also add, since I am a civilian, I speak for civilians. never serving in the military, but always respecting our military brethren that serve for us and protect us and give us the freedoms we do so rightly enjoy. Please, on Memorial Day, I reiterate, remember those who have fallen, memorialize their service, and understand and how difficult it is for families that lose their loved ones, and we that suffer as a nation for every death. Be aware of that. Well, thank you. This has been a great show.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you.
And I appreciate you memorializing your friends, those that you had served with, those that you knew. And it really brings it home for all of us. Thanks.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
Goodbye. Enjoy yourselves, but be safe and honor those that serve for us.